Thanks, Jacob. Right, our next speaker is Alastair Arnott. As Eric mentioned earlier, he is the author of the book Positive Failure, which basically talks about how you can put a spin on failure and how you can take positive aspects out of it. He also does a lot of work with schools as well. So, yeah, without further ado, oh, I think he's getting mic'd up. Let's give it up for Alastair.
There we go. Right then. Just while they're kind of setting up the kind of stuff on there. My name's Alastair Arnott. Lovely to kind of see you. So we've had Eric kind of talking about sex, first thing. And we've had the coke dealer talking about drugs. And now I'm going to come and talk about education for a little bit. So kind of the graveyard shift a little bit. So I'm going to kind of walk you through a little bit about, there's quite a lot of psychological theory, and any kind of academics out there, or if you're interested in arguing the case for failure against someone who doesn't really want to listen, there's a lot of studies in this. So if you're interested in any of them, please do let me know, and I'm happy to email and kind of do all that stuff. So it's pretty cool, isn't it? I'm impressed. Like, if anyone hasn't used it before, this Prezi, I've only started using it 2 weeks ago. It is going to go wrong, and I am going to mess up. Which is great. So yeah, being right, men, okay? Can you imagine if actually all the men were right all of the time? I think the earth would stop spinning, and then kind of by extension, the more I kind of thought about this, Eric, to kind of start with Eric kind of starting from a quote, what an accolade. I could just listen to that guy all day, do you know what I mean? He's got the smoothest voice ever. Being right all the time, we know that's silly, so why do we do it? And why do we aim for it? And this is kind of like the question that kind of started. So I've just kind of come out of 10 years in secondary education in some of the most deprived areas in the country, in Tower Hamlets in London, some inner city stuff in Birmingham. And I kept coming across the same thing, which is this mandatory success and this idea that you have to succeed at school. And listening to kind of Jacob's stuff, and asking about his GCSEs and stuff. As he was talking about the sweets, etc., I can remember something similar happening and going up, and as a teacher, helping the child to sell. So as I was doing the register, be like, right, if anyone wants some sweets, just kind of sort it out. Because it's brilliant. And look at him now, and we keep hearing these kids who make it and who do wonderful things from enthusiasm or passion or not caring and being able to fail. So I was like, there's got to be somebody's got to write about this. And apart from Catherine Scholes, really, who Eric mentioned, there wasn't that much. And I'm like, why is this? Why are people kind of so afraid of it? And they're afraid of it because although we're here and fell forward, it hurts. And I think the emotional hurt from it, Jacob was saying, being in his room for a week or you kind of recover. Would there be a way for all the other Jacobs? What about the kids that are lost? What about the kids that don't do very well in their GCSEs and give up? Is it because they're not clever enough? Is it because they're not are they not the same as Jacob? Well, yeah, they are. So something's going very wrong here. So this is the kind of theory that I kind of came to after doing a stupid amount of reading, which is positive failure is a vaccination with a kind of aim to going towards almost like a failure immunity. And just like a vaccination, it's going to hurt. Do you know what I mean? It's like Susan David is quite an emotional intelligence guru, and she talks about when you take your baby to the doctors, and it starts right from before we can even speak. We shun failure and we shun discomfort because, well, obviously, nobody wants to fail and no one doesn't want it to be uncomfortable. So she took her baby to the doctors, and the doctor was going to give 4 vaccinations. So the baby stands there, the doctor kind of comes in, and then one by one, this evil doctor inserts 4 needles to which the baby bleeds, and it hurts a lot, and the baby screams and cries, and she says, "Don't worry, it's fine." But it's not fine, because you've just been impaled 4 times. And it's that kind of language, and of course, you want to kind of make people that you love and you care about. But that, by extension, is so strangling and so kind of debilitating, it ends up with people feeling that if they can't get it right and they can't make a success, then that really is the end of the world. It's heartbreaking thinking about Eric, what a top guy, do you know what I mean? Spent 10 days, I wanted to help him myself, So could you teach this? Like, could you kind of like put this into schools? I'm not going to do that video because it's a bit boring. So why? Why are we so scared? So what's going on? And I think it's a lot to do with impressing people. I think, we want to, again, keep coming back to kind of the people who've been before me, but there's such good examples. Jacob going to Richard Branson, you want to impress Richard Branson, just kind of putting it out there. But as a toddler, what about then? So I'm going to talk about being sexy, if that's all right. Society expects us, really, if we're all honest with ourselves, to aim to be really good looking, really fashionable, quite hip, which you all are, obviously. And this comes through in the media, it comes through from teachers, it comes through from schools, to be this kind of success and this, this beautiful people. And what's going on, and the research is saying that kids are now beginning to do this and are scared to ask questions. So like, just have a think to yourself, back in school, how many questions did you not ask because you were more concerned about how it would make you look? Because there were loads for me. And it was kind of a game of, and even teachers when they kind of ask a question, there's some studies that come out where a teacher asks a question and they wait 3 seconds before they get, and if they don't get the answer that they want, then it's time to move on. And over time, the average generated student question that was coming out of some American schools, was 1 genuine question per month per student, because they were so scared of looking stupid. Now, this is completely against what we're doing in schools and what we kind of we want for education. We kind of know, if we drill down, we all talked about it. We want these, happy, resilient kids. We want, little mini Jacobs who are prepared to break the rules and enthusiastic. But we're not kind of facilitating this at all. You think back to your English lessons and stuff, and for me it was mice and men. Does anyone like of mice and men? Okay, I'm really sorry guys, there's only 2 of you, that's all right. And then we were doing the mice and men, and the teacher asked me the question. She was like, "Right, Alastair, what do you think of mice and men then?" And I went, "Miss, I think it sucks. I'm sorry." And she went nuts. She was like, "Alastair, how dare you? That's ridiculous. This is one of the greatest pieces of literature," which it is. But yeah, miss, but we've got to examine it. No, you need to be quiet now, that's it. I don't want to hear another word from you. I'm like, all right then, maybe we'll just go start selling sweets and see what happens there. Alastair, I'm going to ask you again, what do you think of mice and men? Miss, I think it is one of the most important pieces of literature to ever grace the 19th century. Just give that man a gold star. All right, okay, yeah, thanks for that. So you take it home and, you show it to your parents and your parents are really happy and all the rest of it. So, we kind of know what we want, okay, and we know what we're kind of looking for. I'm going to talk a bit about this kind of toxic mix a little bit, and then I'll kind of bring it into a bit more psychology and then bring it up to a kind of business stuff. Think about your favorite teacher. Who was that person or persons who really had a massive impact on you? And was it anything to do with grades? Or was it not? Was it that they took a particular interest in you? Or was it a particular subject that they inspired? The research that's coming out is basically saying, and they're going to look in the next kind of 5 to 10 years at changing the whole kind of dynamic of education, is that your favourite teacher can teach you anything, and it's not subject-based. Do you know what I mean? So it's a lot of learning that happens outside the classroom or on the corridors, or it's priceless. And if you can inspire that in someone else, I think that's incredible. And I think failing is the key to all teaching and learning. I think they should start teacher training programs like that. So in my day job, I'm a lecturer at Wolverhampton University in lecturing education for the School for Education Futures. And I am shocked on a daily basis at the number of university students that come and have done everything right. And they've got their really good grades and they're ready to change the world and they want to help kids. And you ask a question and it's silence because they're so terrified of getting it wrong with other trainee teachers in a lecture about failure. And you're kind of thinking, well, these are the people we're sending out. Do you mean? Like the kids starting school this year, they're going to retire in 2080 around. We haven't got a clue. Eric's probably got a clue, but I haven't got a clue, and we're meant to be preparing them for that. And we're still doing, let's get the geography textbooks out and we'll turn to page 88 and answer the questions, I think GCSEs are irrelevant to success. I think it's better to have them than not, but I think we're in massive crisis because we're so kind of het up about being successful. And when Jacob was talking about selling the sweets and stuff, I'm really glad that he finally kind of came to where the head said, we're actually really impressed with what you've done here. But if he hadn't have had the guts to kind of push that, or the, maybe perhaps less supportive parents, how many kids have done that or had that idea and then, haven't done that well at the GCSEs and that's it. It's like, well, I'm not very clever, that's kind of it, at all. It's also really kind of strongly tied to self-esteem. And there came this kind of, about 2005, 2006, this, a guy called Daniel Goleman brought out a book on emotional intelligence, which is kind of based around business and for business leaders and stuff. And I am a big fan of emotional intelligence, I think it's really good. But then someone from the educational world decided, let's put this with kids. Let's boost kids' self-esteem. Sounds fabulous. Let's get them all confident. Let's get them all kind of doing, completing all their tasks and getting really good grades and feeling really good about themselves. So that's what they did, and it started being twisted almost to getting kids to think really highly of themselves without merit. So kind of saying, look, you're really clever, you can do this, that's really good. And you go, oh, okay, yeah, fair enough, sir, yeah, I'll do it, wicked. And they would do it, and that's fine. So I'm going to tell you a little story, which is, my subject specialism was drama and music, and I had a kid in Birmingham, in city Birmingham, called Mikhail, who was a massive kid, massive, great big black kid, lovely kid, and nothing was going right, failing everything. And they sent to me, like, Alastair, this kid's going nuts, he's already punched a teacher, can you get him through his drama? I was like, yes. All right then, cool. He comes in, he's not saying a word. And we spent 2 years, and I made him feel amazing. I was supportive of him, I bigged him up, bigged him up in front of girls, which he really liked. It was good for me because I made a really good relationship. So any of the kids or classes I had problems with, I was like, Mikhail, go sort them out, and you just look at them and they'd start crying. So it was all good. Came to his exam, even he came in early, I bought breakfast for him, it was wicked, he was poor, he was deprived, this is what I got into education for. He did his exam and he got an A star, and he was, mum, it's a big Jamaican family, mum, grandma comes up, they have the big graduation, it's wicked. 3 months later, he killed someone by New Street Station, and he's now in prison, and he's going to be in prison for a long time. And I have struggled with this, and talking about biggest failures and stuff. My biggest failure, I think, was I made him feel so good for nothing to get a grade out of him, and I got that grade. But as soon as I left, and not in a kind of arrogant way, but as soon as his one kind of male role model that believed in him was withdrawn, there was nothing, there was no one. So like the kind of positive failure and the vaccination and the kind of stuff like that, I hadn't vaccinated him, I just shielded him from the illness for a little while. And I think that's the kind of the core essence of positive failure, is if you can start vaccinating people in businesses, education, school, wherever, and you give them the space to fail, to get it wrong, in a safe environment where they can feel vulnerable, and they're adopting a growth mindset, which I'll talk about in a minute, they'll fly. Because that's what we're designed to do, the world was flat, if no one had thought that was wrong, well then, and that first quote, everything's going to fail, everything's going to be wrong. And there's something really human and calming and comfortable about that. I'm here and I'm not giving the perfect presentation. I've already made a bunch of mistakes, and that's great because it's wicked and I don't really care, and I'm sure you guys don't really care either. But as soon as you start being fixed and saying, hello, I'm Alastair, I'm an author and I'm a very clever person, I'm going to tell all you guys how to do it, that's when you start getting into the old school kind of didactic and really current education system that's working on extrinsic motivation. So it's rewards and punishments, and you're doing something for this delayed gratification, you're putting the investment in, and they keep telling you, well, if you get really good GCSE grades, that's fine, because then you're going to go to uni, you get a really good degree, and then you're going to get a job. yesterday we were talking, and I said to a kind of big class of third-year students who were about to kind of graduate, and I was like, what do you think of the notion that people think going to uni and getting a degree guarantees you a job? And they laughed. And it opened up a discussion about how it was more about the extra stuff they had done while studying and working 2 part-time jobs and on a placement in a school somewhere and trying to kind of negotiate a reference from an educational professional whilst living at home because they couldn't afford to go and live in halls. And I'm like, this kind of toxic stuff has permeated like kind of so far into this. This is a guy called Suli Breaks, and the reason I'm going to show this is because there's someone with a Loughborough University hoodie, so I was like, yeah, we've got to put that in, this is really good. And he's starting to get a bit of a name for himself, a bit like Jacob did, as for breaking the rules, and he's, to my knowledge, one of the only kind of 18, 19, 20-year-olds who's standing up against the education system and saying, actually, hang on a second, you know, GCSEs, they didn't mean anything for me, you know, it didn't do anything. So I'll let him kind of say, Ben, you can do this rather than me clicking it, like, and it doing, or Alastair. His name's Alastair, spelt the same and everything, fabulous. There you go.
Revolution and Represent 107.3 FM. My name is Tariq. Now, listeners, you may remember not too long ago we had a spoken word artist by the name of Suli Breaks. Came down, dropped a live session, and a lot of you were excited about that. I was excited this morning when I opened up a package, had no idea what it was. Opened it up, put it in the player, pressed play, and it totally blew me away. It's his brand new piece from his brand new The Dorm Room EP. I'm going to have to let spoken word do what it does best and let it speak for itself. Brand new Suli Breaks.
Right now, there is a kid finishing parents' evening in a heated discussion with his mother, saying, why does he have to study subjects he will never ever use in his life? And she will look at him blank-eyed, stifle a sigh, think for a second, and then lie. She'll say something along the lines of, you know, to get a good job you need a good degree, and these subjects will help you get a good degree. We never had this opportunity when I was younger. And he will reply, but you were young a long time ago, weren't you, Mum? And she won't respond, although what he implies makes perfect sense, that society's needs would have changed since she was 16. But she will ignore him, grip his hand more sternly, then drag him to the car. But what she doesn't know is that she didn't ignore him just to shut him up. She didn't lie because they were just returning from parents' evening and an argument in the hallway would look bad on her resume. She won't lie because she's just spent the last 1 hour convincing a stern-faced teacher that she will ensure that her child studies more at home. No, she will lie simply because she does not know any better herself. Although her whole adult life she has never used or applied Pythagoras' theorem, pathetic fallacy, and still does not know the value of X. She will rely on society to tell her that her child, who has one of the sharpest minds in the school, is hyperactive, unfocused, easily distracted, and wayward. Students, how many equations, subjects, and dates did you memorize just before an exam never to use again? How many A grades did you get which were never asked for when you applied for a job? How many times have you remembered something 5 minutes just after the teacher said stop writing, only to receive your results 1 month later to realize that you were only 1 mark short of the top grade? Does that mean remembering 5 minutes earlier would have made you more qualified for a particular job? Well, on the application form it would have. We all have different abilities, thought processes, experiences and genes. So why is a class full of individuals tested by the same means? So does that mean Sherelle thinks she's dumb because she couldn't do a couple of sums? And if this issue is not addressed properly, it then becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Then every school has the audacity to have a policy on equality. The irony. Exams are society's methods of telling you what you're worth. But you can't let society tell you what you are, because it's the same society that tells you that abortion is wrong but then looks down on teenage parents. The same society that sells products to promote natural hair, looks and smooth complexion, with the model on the box half photoshopped and has fake lashes and hair extensions, with pastors that preach charity but own private jets, imams that preach against greed but are all fat, parents that say they want educated kids but constantly marvel at how rich Richard Branson is, governments that preach peace but endorse force wars, that say they believe so much in the importance of higher education and further learning, then why increase tuition fees every single year? I believe Miss Jefferson when she took me into the office and said that my exams would be imperative to my success, because we was taught to always follow when Miss Jefferson led. But then I took Jefferson out of the equation and learned to think for myself. I realised we was taught to always follow when Miss led. The irony. Test us with tests, but the finals are never final, because they never prepare us for the biggest test, which is survival. And what I suggest is fairly outlandish, so I do not expect everyone to understand this, except for the kids who knows what it feels like to be worth no more than that D or that A that you get on results day, and the ones whose best stories were never good enough for the English teacher, because apparently you missed out key literal techniques, did not follow the class plan, and the language was too informal for him to understand. But then he'd reference Hamlet and Macbeth, and you'd fight the urge to express your contempt by partially clenching your fist with only your medius finger left protruding in the middle of your hand, and then asked if he was aware that Shakespeare was known as the innovator of slang. Or the kid at the back of the class who thinks, why am I studying something that doesn't fuel my drive? But then when confronted with a maths problem, his eyes come alive. So this one is for my generation, the ones who found what they were looking for on Google, the ones who followed their dreams on Twitter, pictured their future on Instagram, accepted destiny on Facebook. This one's for my failures and my dropouts, for my unemployed graduates, my shop assistants, cleaners and cashiers with bigger dreams, my self-employed entrepreneurs, my world changers and my dream chasers, because the purpose of why I hate school but love education was not to initiate a worldwide debate, but to let them know that whether 72 or 88, 44 or 68, we will not let exam results decide our fate. Peace.
This kid's got a point. I was quite blown away by that. I was like, wow, he's brave. It's kind of going up against like the Department for Education. Makes a lot of sense. Do you mean? Like, and I think right from the year dot, you know, we are told that these exams and our qualifications are us. Well, no, they're not us. Do you know what I mean? Like, Jacob's a really great example. They're not us at all. And if you don't get academic stuff and you don't want to become a university professor, those are the people who win school. You know, those are the left brain, kind of go in, tick all the boxes, get their A stars, go up, become a university professor, and you are a success. Well, what about everybody else? Now, I know we're talking very general terms and stuff, and I do love education. I'm not kind of just slamming it. And it's wonderful, but the kind of effort that people are putting in, the effort that kids are putting in, and this relates to the kind of growth mindset stuff, is the harder you try and the more you fail, the more stupid you are. And this is something I can't seem to change, influence or shift in teenagers, no matter how much I'll talk to them, or in my form or conversations, they'll be like, yeah, but sir, you know, come on, sir, you know, if it's easy and, you know, you get the test and you are quite clever, aren't you? And say, well, no, not if, you know, you're just starting, and that's kind of just the start of it. So to focus on grades and let a grade define you, you guys survived your education, you know, when you're kind of making your own points and doing the way that you want to do. But there are thousands who haven't, of wonderful people who are incredibly bright and have so much to offer, who were just lost, just kind of like the lost kids, you know, talking to parents at parents' evenings, you know, and they kind of say, oh, you know, I didn't do too well at school, you know, but yeah, but you own like, you know, a multinational construction company now, don't you? Yeah, but I'm not very clever. Well, yes, you are, you know, totally. So I think we need to start redefining intelligence, and we're at the start of this, because the way that kids kind of see themselves is very much a reflection of what they're told and what's around them. So from the kind of media and the kind of these societal pressures to look really good and be really clever and get, you know, a string of A stars and impress your parents, well, that's a huge amount of pressure. It's a massive amount of pressure. So growth mindset. Okay, could you just have a show of hands? Has anyone heard of growth mindset? Wicked. Do you want to swap for a second? How much do you know? Do you want to go?
I did my undergrad dissertation on growth mindset.
Wicked. Let's swap. Okay, go on. Okay, go on. Do you want to like explain it? Say if you explain it to like Eric, who's not very clever. Okay, he's not even got his PhD yet. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, he's a bit slow. So, you know, and he's foreign. So, yeah.
Well, I'm foreign too, so,
Are you foreign too?
yeah.
Yeah, no, go on, I'm only joking. Go on.
The growth mindset is a way of thinking where you have a fluid mindset and a fixed mindset. And a fluid mindset is where you think that you can always get better and that you can expand your knowledge. And a fixed mindset is, okay, I made this target and that's what I'm good. That is the essence of growth mindset.
Brilliant, thank you. That's great. It is. It's spot on. That's better than I could put it as well. But this idea of, you know, Einstein wasn't really Einstein until he put the effort in and did the same process that we're talking about today, that I've spoken about. Guys before me, people after me will, I'm sure, speak about getting it wrong and keeping going, and that persistence. You know, Jacob continuing to deal coke no matter what, no matter how much trouble he gets. So it's just a short video that kind of really kind of sums it up quite well. I think, and it's just, if you take one thing away, as well as the positive failure bit, it's if you can adopt a growth mindset, you're pretty much unstoppable. But if you accept that you're going to fail and you've got a growth mindset, you're invincible. Do you know what I mean? Because you're not afraid to be wrong and you're not going to stop. So yeah. Okay, so I think that's really kind of like quite a nice image of how it all kind of like fits together, and how that kind of all works. There's a lot of school at the moment in schools about talent, you know, nurturing kind of talent and stuff. And I've kind of got out on a bit of a limb, and I'm still not quite sure, even though it's published now, so I can't really go back on it. But I think that's what I mean. I think talent's, well, whatever. You can be the most talented footballer ever. If you're, you know, picking on people and being horrible and more interested in, you know, drinking, it's not going to happen. It's not going to be the skill. And this kind of praising people, you know, who can think like when they were at school about that one kid that was amazing at something, but was actually a really horrible, nasty person, and made sure everyone else knew that they were amazing. I think, again, it's the effort and the time and putting that in. So tie that with the fact that a lot of students aren't putting the effort in as much because they think it's useless, because they're not going to get a better grade, unlike the Jacobs of the world. Well, that's a massive problem. That's like the end of the economy, because if the kids that stop trying, or the kids are just kind of ticking boxes just to get like a whole bunch of kind of qualifications, we're in trouble. You know, we've got a really kind of big problem. This guy, okay, and his second name is called Csikszentmihalyi, okay? Best way to remember this, all right? He's the #1 guy, really, in positive psychology for talking about flow in learning. And you say his second name like this, okay? So chick, as in girl, cent, as in cent, me, hi. There you go. That's it. Do you know what I mean? Just, it's all about chicks. That's it. Straight up. This is his equation, and flow is like productive daydreaming. So if you can think of a time when you were so engaged with something that 6 hours went past. For some people it's technology, for some people it's gardening, for some people it's running a business. You know, you just keep going and going and going, but you're not daydreaming, you're not mindlessly doing something, you're being productive and you're being creative. Well, they've pinned it down and it's called flow. You get kids into flow, that's the X factor that means kids won't leave the classroom and you can't put down the book and you won't stop, and you know, your partner's saying, you know, it's 4 in the morning, it's time to call it quits, and you're like, yeah, just 2 more minutes, and you're still going. Very useful if you want to kind of convince people about failure, because when you're in flow, you don't care about getting it wrong. You naturally, it's like autopilot. You naturally, when you're so engrossed and you start messing up, well, you just keep going. You're not even bothered. It's only when you bring other people or education into the equation, and you know, people start having opinions and stuff, that's when you start getting kind of worried about it. Self-esteem is irrelevant to success. If anyone wants to ask me more on that later on, we've got a bunch of studies, which is really helpful. The higher the self-esteem, the more damage they do to other people, and psychological, sometimes physical. Low self-esteem isn't great either, and the fact that, you know, you kind of tend to do more damage to yourself, psychologically and physically. You should get self-esteem from overcoming difficulty and overcoming failure yourself. So knowing you can do something is a lot better, in my opinion, than someone else telling you you can do something just to make you feel good at the time. We've covered that, that's fine. Just on the kind of a couple of final points, let's stop being perfect. I know it's hard, Alastair, yes. But if we just take the kind of brakes off a little bit and be like, look, you know we're not perfect. You know, if anyone asks this, and we know this in the abstract, and Catherine Scholl's TED speech, Eric was talking about, she sums it up far better than I could. You know, give yourself permission to get it wrong. You know, everyone learns from the mistakes. Yeah, all right then. You know, but we're constantly striving for it, and that's the impression that we're giving to our kids. And I think we're locked in a constant kind of hedonic upgrade, where we have to do better, more exams, become cleverer, become more good looking, lose more weight, you know, be a better husband, wife, girlfriend, whatever. Brené Brown talks about imperfection, and if it's something you're interested in, again, it's really worth checking her out. And she says, and she's right, we're the most materialistic and addicted, depression-ridden generation so far. How many of us, you know, and you don't have to answer, are either on antidepressants, use alcohol perhaps a bit much and too much than we should, to maintain our best possible face and image to the world, when really, if we just said, well, okay, I'm here and I'm probably going to get it wrong, but I'm going to give it my best shot, it's a lot more endearing. Oh, I should let it go, guys, it's wicked. So, just to kind of sum up, my hypothesis is to just give people the space to fail. If you do that, it will build relationships. Everybody will be a lot happier. There'll be a lot more progression. There's all the references, which if anybody wants the references, we'll sort you out. Thank you ever so much for listening, and happy for any questions. Thank you.
Any questions?
Wow.
Hello. Have you got me? Yes. I was just thinking, as you were speaking, failure for me is I can't even start something sometimes, which is why I'm here. I want to change that. But the thing I'm thinking that I wrote down was, so what we should be doing is becoming failure conscious, and rather than worry for any reason about failing, just be aware that we need to fail to learn, which is what I think I can believe in that. Yeah,
it is a good thing. Do you know what I mean? I think it's kind of seen very much, it's been demonised, and it comes from, there's a lot of stuff on the kind of caveman and cavewoman thing, where, you know, you fail to get food, you're going to die. You know, it's an inbuilt kind of thing, and it's called a heterodoxy. So it's like this bit of society that's unquestioned, and we don't even think about that it's bad. You know, epic fail. You know, type that into Google, that's hilarious. So it makes me laugh. So actually, it's a success in itself. But I just think people should be vulnerable. we're all very vulnerable. Do you know what I mean? Just I'm standing here, you're sitting there, whatever. You know, I was still scared to get up. I mean, especially more nervous that it's being filmed and this guy's taking pictures, and I'm like, I don't think my hair looks quite as good as it should be. You know, but it's a lot more warm than kind of, I'm going to present, oh my goodness, I have to get everything right. What happens if the projector goes down? What do you know? And that's what we found ourselves in. So I'd say, yeah, if, you know, getting started, that's the scariest thing ever. And no one can tell you, like, how that feels. Like, I'm the kind of enemy of empathy, because I used to hate it, you know, like, even death. You know, someone in your family dies and someone else comes to you and just goes, oh, I know how it feels. No, you don't. Do you know what I mean? You totally don't. So, you know, for you, it sounds like that's a massive step, and there'll be so much kind of stuff for you to even take that first step. You know, for Eric, you know, getting out of bed after 10 days, well, we all get out of bed every day. But for him, that was like climbing Everest, it sounds like. You know, and the last thing you want to hear is, you know, oh yeah, it's okay, you know, I know how that, I was there once, yeah, and you were like, no, you weren't. So, yeah, I applaud your bravery. I think anyone who's prepared to kind of take that first step is a really good thing.
So I was very talented at school. All I was any good at was what they called art. But because I was so good, I just got credit after credit after credit. Nobody ever taught me anything. And I'm learning now, like 50 odd years later, how to sort of be an artist.
Wow.
And I don't want to blow it.
Yeah, you're not going to blow it though. Be fine. Be fine. It's awesome. Thank you. There you go, Ben.
One more question.
Go on.
Thanks for the speeches. Really interesting. I'm quite interested to know, like, my understanding of the world of education is that it's very focused on results, as you were talking about, and justifying itself using data, using metrics. So I imagine that's going to be quite a difficult culture to change. And have you discovered or created or encountered any ways of measuring the successes that are in failure or the perception of failure? So the alternative way of looking at the way people develop educationally, is there a way of measuring it? Or should there be?
No and yes. Kind of. There's an organisation called CREC in Birmingham that are part of a massive study of 70 countries with 3,000 kids in each country, and it's going to be published in 2018-19. And we think, in our kind of education ivory tower, that it's going to be the end of international league tables. And if that's the case, that's the end of pushing literacy and maths, because, you know, Britain, whatever, I think it's 25th, 26th, and we're all, we must do better. Well, we're not going to do better because there isn't going to be any league tables. We'll be benchmarked with Australia, America, and other kind of quite well-developed nations. So we can only be first, second, and third. So that's going to change the whole game, and it's going to change the curriculum. And some of the stuff they're measuring is persistence. And I think positive failure in persistence, and it's something I'm looking at for my PhD, is like, sorry, Eric, is I think it's persistence. And something I'm picking up from people's questions, people speaking, is they haven't stopped. Or if they've stopped for a little while, and then they've kind of carried on. So I think that's where it will sit in policy, but not at the moment. And yes, and what a good question. Yeah. Okay. Right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much, Alastair. Alastair will be around for a bit longer, so you can chat to him in the break if you have any more questions. Also, we have 2 signed copies of his book that Alastair will judge later on the best tweets and social media stuff. So please tweet, share some photos, post on Facebook, and yeah, you'll get a signed copy of his book.